All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Geopolitical Trends, where truth matters. Very excited to be with you as always. And of course, today is the 18th. As I mentioned to you, we'll have our none other than Larry Jonhson. So everybody was asking, when is Larry coming back? I said, well, he is overseas, and when he's back, he'll be here. So Larry is here. So I'm going to bring him in right away, guys, because we got a lot to cover. The only thing I need to let you know is that don't forget to join me tomorrow for both the live stream at 12:15 Central Standard Time and the one at 2000 hours. I'll be talking to my guest in China directly. So don't forget that one. So, all right, let me just see quickly who's here. Well, hi to all of you guys. I can't go through the list. You know how it is. So let me bring in Larry. Hi, Larry.
Hey there, David.
Good to see you as always. And on behalf of the community, by the way, we say thank you for carving out time for us here. So we don't take thanks for granted in this community.
Always a pleasure. I always appreciate the invitation.
Well, it means a lot.
Good to be wanted.
Well, it means a lot to us, Larry, because here's the hard truth. I always tell my folks at the community, the guests that I bring is the ones that you're gonna learn from. I care less for the numbers. I care less for the viewership and all that. All that stuff doesn't matter to me. What matters is the substance. And this is why you are one of those. And I'm not saying it to be Mr. Nice. By the way, guys, I'm going to ask you a question about Larry. And I'd like you to answer. Don't be nice. Describe Larry in one word in the chat box. If you will be kind. One word. Describe Larry. So that's to me how it works. So. All right, what I want to start with, Larry, is your recent trip, if I may just address this one briefly, because a lot of people do not know about the St. Petersburg International Conference. Can you please just enlighten my community here for them to understand what this convention is all about?
Yeah, my understanding is, they call it the International Economic Forum, but you're right, it's also a convention. Mm-hmm. It started... I don't recall if it's 24 or 27 years ago. But right now it brings people from 136 different countries. Wow. You've got, there were like well over 25,000 participants. And the organization, just the logistics of putting that together were remarkable. You have to be a pretty advanced, developed country to do that. Because, in addition, they required PCR tests of everybody getting into the venue. Well, just, doing those tests, then processing them, and then linking them to particular IDs and particular badges. And,
wow.
That's all pretty involved. There were banks, businesses, members of government. I know that at the session I was presenting, the Syria's ambassador to Moscow was there, and sort of warmly received my remarks. So this is a cutting edge conference. It's like the opposite of the World Economic Forum. Yeah. This is talking about, let's call it the New World Economic Forum. The BRICS is the foundation, and it has accelerated over the last 2 years with the imposition of sanctions against Russia, the attempt and the West's constant talk about attacking China has really accelerated efforts by the Russians, the Chinese, and the Indians, along with the South Africans, the Brazilians to a lesser extent. But they're really serious about creating this alternative world economic order, that you're not going to be held hostage to the dollar anymore. And those people that tend to believe that the dollar is forever, they haven't looked at history. Look at the United Kingdom. Look at the Republic of Rome. They used to control the world currency. How'd that turn out? So these empires are not guaranteed eternal life. And the United States, by its very actions right now, as was demonstrated at this forum. Now, I was a minority. There were a very, very, very small number of Americans attending there. And I said, ditto for Europeans. They're trying to ignore it, pretend it's not there. But for God's sake, when you got 136 countries, You've got, of the top 4 economies in the world, 3 of the 4 are BRICS nations. China, number 1, India, number 3, and Russia, number 4. Well, them combined completely outshine the United States.
Yeah.
It's just stupid not to be a part of it. So, it's quite dynamic. It was a week long,
Yeah.
and it's going to grow in importance, I believe, as time goes on, not diminish.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you shared this because a lot of us here in the West, we don't hear much about the St. Petersburg economic forum there. So I'm glad you were there, so you saw with your own eyes, and for the audience to hear it directly from you. So thank you for that. So let's get into our really what we're gonna be talking, and what I would like to have your input in, your analysis, your perspective, your understanding. What do you make up of the deployment of a nuclear submarine 90 miles away from Florida?
A lot of this is political theater.
Mm-hmm.
So the Russians have had submarines and do have submarines off our coast for the last 70 years, 60 years at least. So the fact that they surfaced it and brought it into Havana was to give it a reminder to the United States that, hey, you want to be off of our coast, you want to be off of outside our land boundaries, threatening us.
Yeah.
Who can play that game? Now, the arrival of these, I think it was 4 Russian ships and the submarine.
Yeah.
This, from your prior experience, these things are planned in advance, usually a year in advance. So this was not necessarily tied to the recent statements by the United States and NATO talking about putting weapons in the hands of Ukrainians that would then be used to hit targets inside Russia, and basically encouraging a broader war against Russia. However, just because it was pre-planned and they were going to do this anyway, and the Russians did it again last July 7th, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's not like this is the first time. That's how it was played in the Western media. Oh my God, the Russians are out of control.
Yeah.
But the Russians still were willing to use it as a way to send a visible message to the United States that, look, we have military capabilities that if we do off your shores, that we can threaten you. The United States has been threatening Russia without the people of America realizing it. Since 2007 up until 2021, so we're talking roughly 14 years, the United States conducted an annual military exercise in the Black Sea with Ukraine called Sea Breeze.
Yeah.
We were landing Marines in landing craft on the shores of Ukraine. And some of these they were laughable. They were described as, these were anti-piracy exercises. Oh, for God's sake, please. We're not that stupid, okay? We understand exactly what's going on, as did the Russians. And you say, well, how can you say that? I say, okay, just flip it. What would you, if you're an American citizen, think that if for the last 14 years, Russia had sailed its fleet into the Caribbean and conducted landing exercises on the coast of Mexico with Russian Marines? Would we be cool with that? Oh, hell no.
Yeah.
I mean, we go, oh my God, this is a threat. You're threatening our hemisphere. This is we'd break out the Monroe Doctrine. And so it underscores this hypocrisy. Excuse me. The just gross hypocrisy of Washington and the politicians there. That we don't think twice about creating a military provocation against Russia in its own backyard. Whereas if they did the same to us, we would be out of our minds. We'd see it as almost an act of war.
Yeah.
So that's what we're playing with. And so that's what this thing in Cuba was. It was planned. They arrived. They didn't bring any nuclear weapons with them. They had hypersonic missiles, though,
Yeah.
and those hypersonic missiles could cause terrific damage, particularly to ships and that would be based in, say, Norfolk.
Yeah, they can go that far. So, but at the
Yeah.
same time, Larry, as a geopolitical analyst, I have to think in terms of course, the optics of it. You and I understand. We came from
Yeah.
almost similar background. That context matters. The facts that the timing of it, which coincided with the statement by NATO about having 300,000 troops prepared to deal with the Russians and all that. So to me, it was like the optics of it. But here is one question that I would like to have your input in, and this is just a hypothetical. A hypothetical. Let's say, for example, China and North Korea decided to join Russia for those exercises at the Caribbean.
Yeah.
How will that be perceived, in your opinion? Let's just, for the sake of thinking, this might happen. How do you think Washington would react?
Yeah. Well, that would have really been a significant message. Now, people in America ought to pay attention to the fact that Russia, China, and Iran have been conducting military exercises, but they're doing it off the coast of Iran, and they're doing it in the Persian Gulf and near the Straits of Hormuz. So it's not a far-fetched fantasy; it's a reality. But that would have bringing them to Cuba to conduct such an exercise, the United States would have said, "Oh, that's an offensive action. You're threatening us." Yeah, damn straight, Skippy. That's exactly what they're doing, and that's exactly what we are doing. And that's the point people in our media fails to adequately report in this country.
Yeah,
that just how serious our breaches are, and the kind of saber rattling we're doing, because it's getting to a point now where it's really, it's like light matches inside a room filled with gunpowder. You light that match and it hits the wrong thing, you're going to set the whole thing off. And when we're talking about setting this off, we're talking about an escalation to use of nuclear weapons.
Yeah,
this is as dangerous a time as you and I have ever seen in our lifetimes.
Indeed. And this will lead me to, I want to go back a little bit in history, Larry, and just consider back the 1962 crisis when Nikita Khrushchev. Now, there are those, and I wrote this about it in my book and all that. Some analysts in Washington were saying at that time, based on the argument, is that, well, Nikita Khrushchev was just bluffing. I counter-argued that, and I said, no, he wasn't bluffing.
Right.
He was not bluffing. What do you think, Larry? Was he in case?
Oh, no, he wasn't bluffing. He was reacting. So the United States had deployed missiles to Turkey, and they were in play, nuclear tipped. Now, what's Timothy Weiner, who wrote the book Legacy of Ashes, he describes in there that during the Cuban Missile, at the very start of the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was a recorded conversation between John F. Kennedy, then president, and his National Security Advisor, McGeorge Bundy, the Secretary of Defense, I believe it was McNamara. And Kennedy muses out loud. He goes, "Why would the Russians do this?" And he then said, "They're acting like we've deployed missiles on their border." And the room goes dead silent. And McGeorge Bundy goes, "Sir, we have." And Kennedy was like, "Oh." And so here's the guy who's sitting in the big chair, top of the heap, and he didn't have a clue that we had already created the provocation. And so at that point, Russia was serious. They were going to, equip those missiles, they were going to be combat operational in a short time. And then we would have been facing what Russia was facing with those missiles that were based in Turkey. And so that was the deal that was cut. That we agreed, not publicly, but hey, okay, you take those down and we'll take ours down. We promise.
Yeah.
And at least back then we still had credibility. Russians still believed us. We don't have that. The U.S. doesn't have
Not
that
anymore.
credibility anymore,
Yeah. So,
which is
well,
what
I
makes
know.
it. I just
Yeah,
said
go ahead.
which makes it so dangerous. That's what makes today so dangerous.
Indeed, Larry. I mean, I got pushed back, especially after, because I had to send the manuscript at that time to, the government for approval and so forth. And I got an email. I was like, Mr. O, I think you were wrong. He was just bluffing. I said, no, he wasn't. He wasn't,
Yeah.
because you guys don't want to admit the reality for it. So I'm glad you clarified this. So I wasn't thinking to myself, you
Yeah.
know what? I'm going to ask Larry when he comes in here to get
No,
your perspective
you're
on
not crazy. I agree with you.
Thank God somebody believes in me, right?
Yeah.
Now let's talk about this NATO plan of deploying those 300,000 troops and armored against Russia. What is this is all about?
Delusional thinking. So uh, the conventional military doctrine
Mm-hmm.
is that an attacking force, and so in this case, NATO would be an attacking force. Can we agree on that?
Mm-hmm.
And they'd be going up a defending force. Well, the defending force in this case are the Russians. Well, the Russians have 1.3 million troops. The conventional military doctrine suggests you have to have a 3-to-1 rate,
Yes.
advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not great at math, but if the Russians got 1.3 million, we're talking 3.9 million, almost 4 million
Million.
troops. So they're sending up basically 9% of that.
Hmm.
Guess what? Not going to work. All it's going to do is get a bunch of people killed. And Russia's become real good at killing them.
Oh.
They're um, they're like Clint Eastwood in his last movie, Pale Rider. I've killed. He is a killer, and Russia's become a very effective combat killer,
Yeah.
as where they were able to minimize their casualties and maximize Ukrainians, and they've been killing some Westerners along the way. If the West is foolish enough to try to intervene in that way, this war will expand. Now, I don't anticipate Russia using nuclear weapons
Mm-hmm.
out of the blue. They're going to have to be provoked. And I think, candidly, what's come out of the NATO this week and the United States,
Yeah.
and so you had Kirby say just yesterday that, oh yeah, we're going to keep backing Ukraine until they defeat Russia. So right away, you've got a declaration of war by the United States against Russia without Congress approving it.
Yeah.
And we're going to back Ukraine until they militarily defeat Russia. Well, Russia's not going to be militarily defeated.
Defeated.
But Russia hears that and they recognize, okay, the United States is basically declaring war on us. Then they see the B-52s that are flying up to adjacent in close proximity to Russia's borders. And Russia scrambles interceptors and goes out and pushes them back. Well, again, that's an unnecessary provocation because those B-52s can carry nuclear weapons. And Russia understands that. And so Russia has to make the judgment. How do we know that this ship is not actually carrying a live bomb right now and that there are plans to attack us? Yeah. And then you had Stoltenberg at the NATO yesterday start talking about how NATO is going to expand its nuclear weapons and move them closer to Russia's border. Now, if you're the chief of Russian intelligence, or if you're the head of the Stavka, their general staff, you're hearing this, and you got two options. You can say, those Americans, those NATO people, they're just funning. They don't mean it. They're just talking smack. They had too much to drink last night. No, that's not what they're saying.
No.
They're saying, okay, they mean what they say. We're going to take them, that they absolutely are coming to attack us. So we've got to be ready for this, and we're going to put in place contingency plans to respond, some of which may include preemptive strikes. I mean, that's how dangerous this is. And it's like, you want to grab these people and shake them and say, do you not realize what you're doing?
Yeah.
For God's sake, wake up. You are playing with radioactive fire. It's that simple.
Well, actually, this is why I believe, I think what was it, 2 months or 3 months ago, when the Russians did the drills for the tactical nukes? I think it was
just a month ago.
a month ago.
And they're doing a new set right now with Belarus, Russia.
Yeah.
But having worked on military exercises for a long while, it's important to note these were not just recently dreamed up. They didn't get the orders to put together an exercise in the last 3 to 4 weeks. So usually that's an extensive planning process in advance.
Yeah.
But part of that planning process is you recognize we have to train to, and let me explain what these exercises consist of. The purpose of these exercises is, one, to ensure that when there is an event or an incident that a government's going to have to react to, that the let's call it the national command authority, or in this case, the President Putin, can communicate with his Ministry of Defense, and they in turn can communicate with the relevant military units that are involved with that particular mission, and that they can do so quickly and efficiently. And then those military units can communicate back up the chain of command that, okay, yeah, we're ready. We've mobilized our people. We've called everybody back from leave, whatever. And then you go through an actual planning process. And there are two basic types of planning process. One's a crisis response. The terrorists have taken over the Achille Laurel. The ship is out here in the middle of the Mediterranean. What are we going to do? Well, and then, hey, we can send SEAL Team 6. SEAL Team 6 has got the capability to land on and board that ship underway and conduct a hostage rescue operation. And so then the whole planning process, they go through that planning process. That's crisis response. It's contained within, say, 2 days to 7-8 days, short time frame. You then have the longer term exercises that are more conventional. But again, within that, you go through the process of alerting the units, issuing them a warning order, telling them to get ready, get prepared to do something. They have to write out a concept of operations. Hey, here's what we propose to do. Here's our plan of action. And then it goes back up the chain of command. The plan of action signs off. So in this particular case with these nuclear exercises, they're wanting to make sure that when the Kremlin gives the order, okay, deploy those missiles. These are on mobile launchers, so that the units can scramble. They can get their personnel actually into the units, start them up, and drive them off. Now, where are you going to drive them to? So you work on that. They get orders on, here's where you're going to deploy. Then once you deployed, how do you set up? You go through the process of setting it up, getting it ready to fire, and then you work on the communications back and forth of, either you do a simulated fire, you get the command, or you say, back down, move, So that's what these exercises are about. So they're not to be ignored.
Yeah.
But these also were planned in advance. So, I wanted to go into depth on that because a lot of times people don't understand what you talk about military exercise, what it actually means.
Yeah. Well, great for those. Thank you for those insights. A lot of people do not know. I mean, some of us who've been in the military, we had to go through the process and understand how it works and so forth. I wanna get your take, Larry, on the proposal, and I use the term very carefully here, the truce proposal that Russia proposed to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you make out of that, given what just happened in Switzerland with the so-called Ukraine Peace Initiative, which, by the way, was a complete failure? I just read the final communique. 8 countries refused to sign.
Right.
And anytime you have a final communique that not all the parties agree, that means it's failure. What do you make out of that?
Have you ever seen somebody go into a car dealership, and so they go in and they say, okay, here's this, I'm going to buy this Lamborghini, and it's cheap. We'll give it to you for $100,000, but you need to put $15,000 down. And you go, no. You walk away from the deal. So then you come back and say, okay, I'm ready to buy now. Okay, well, the price now is $150,000, and you got to put $50,000 up front. Well, wait. What happened to the $15,000? Well, that's exactly what's happened to Ukraine here.
Yeah.
So in 2022, they had a deal on the table with Russia, wasn't fully fleshed out, but in March of 22, that they could keep Donetsk, they could keep Luhansk. There had to be some security guarantees, but they had to also reject that they weren't going to be part of NATO, and Russia would, withdraw its forces. Oh, Ukraine crapped all over that under the pressure from the United States and Great Britain. Boris Johnson was the one to deliver the message in person. Don't do this or else. So Ukraine walks away. All right, Putin's back. Now what's he saying? Okay, here's our deal. We're going to keep Donetsk. We're going to keep Luhansk. We're going to keep Zaporizhia. We're going to keep Kherson. You pull all your troops out of those areas because you still got troops in Kherson, in Zaporizhia, and Donetsk. Pull them out and no longer agree to be part of NATO. And we'll stop attacking you right now. They didn't say anything about pulling out. We'll stop attacking you. Well, right away you go, oh, that's outrageous, and United States, and that's outrageous. No. Notice what Russia didn't say in that. They didn't say anything about Kiev or Kyiv.
Yeah.
They didn't say anything about Odessa. Things that can still be negotiated. Well, that was last week.
Yeah.
So the next offer I think that will come in will be, you can clear out of Odessa, you can clear out of Kiev, and we won't continue killing you. But that was the best deal. That was the second best deal Ukraine could have got, what was offered last week. And it was serious on the part of the Russians. Now the West go, how dare they? Well, you know what? Who was it? Austin said they can't dictate. Actually, it was a talking point. Both Austin and Stoltenberg said the Russians are in no position to dictate. Oh, I beg to differ. They're in a great position to dictate because they got more soldiers on the battlefield. They got more guns than we do. All right, they got more of everything: more planes, more helicopters, more artillery, more tanks, and most importantly of all, more soldiers, trained soldiers. And they're going to continue to press forward. So if Ukraine doesn't accept this, the next stop is going to be, I predict, an unconditional surrender. That'll be because Russia is not giving anything back now. That's not a negotiable possibility. You're not going to sit down and Russia can go, oh, okay, well, we'll let it's not like playing Monopoly. Okay, I'll let you have Park Place for Venture Avenue or whatever.
Yeah.
No, or I'll let you have Donetsk and Luhansk, but you got to give us Kherson and Zaporizhia. No, not happening. Russia's in. These are now federal republics of Russia.
Russian Federation. Yeah, you're right.
They're part of us, so they're not going away. They're staying. You get out. And if you don't get out, we'll push out. And then, which is exactly what's going to happen.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask you, because I've been reading elsewhere, and I'll dig through the sort of think tanks and even institutes for peace and so forth. And one of them that was I don't know if you're familiar, Larry, with the Institute of Study of War.
Oh yes, ISW, the Neocon Hive.
You won't believe the title, what it says. And by the way, guys, I'm going to put the link for you. You can read the article later on. I'm going to put it right here in the chat box for you guys. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to ask you, Larry, about this one, because the title of it, it says, why Putin remains and interested in meaningful negotiations with Ukraine. I think the flipping, which to me is manipulation. I read what the Kremlin statement issued regarding what the Russia proposed. I looked at it, as one looking from outside in. I said, well, that's a better deal. But I had my doubts. Ukraine won't be able to make a decision unilaterally, and it can't. So,
they were, this was as clear a proposal as you get. There was, like I said, I was more interested in what wasn't in it than what was in it. And because once you see that they didn't say a thing about Odessa, didn't see a thing about Kiev, because they could have said, and you pull your forces out of these provinces, and then also we'll discuss what the status of Kiev and Odessa will be. They could have said that. They didn't. So
that's true. That's true. I want to get your take on the recent statement that just happened yesterday by none other than the incompetent and liar. That's what I call him, and I don't shy away from saying it because it's the truth. Joun Stoltenberg, by saying now, NATO countries, or NATO in general, will have to increase its defense spending for this year, and guess what, by about 18%. And that makes me think, who's going to afford that?
But remember what happened about a month ago. Stoltenberg was complaining bitterly about all these NATO countries who had made these pledges of support to Ukraine, that they were going to kick in X amount of dollars and X amount of military equipment. That's what they promised, and they didn't do it. And so they still haven't done it. And that's the thing, that talk, the old expression, talk is cheap. Man, you can say anything, I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today, Wimpy from Popeye. And that's sort of what the West has become, making all these fantastic promises to Ukraine and not even delivering half of what they're promising. So it's just, again, it's symptomatic of the failure of NATO, because already you're seeing the strains in NATO. You have Hungary saying, we're not going to go all in on this Ukraine project. Turkey notified NATO, if you're going to go to war with Russia, count us out. We're not there. And there right away, you're removing the second largest army in NATO. So, what do you do then? Slovakia, similar. So, you're getting signs of the so-called unity of NATO is starting to fray around the edges. And then, and you had Germany and Poland both reject pleas by the United States and NATO to send their Patriot missile batteries to Ukraine. Both said, oh, hell no. No, we're keeping them for us.
Because they will become a target. As simple as that. This brings me to one point, Larry. You mentioned earlier in the scenario of if hypothetically things go in a direction where Ukraine will have no other option but surrender. Are we going to see, hypothetically, similar setting to that of 1945 by the Japanese? Or it will be different?
No, I think it'll be different. I think it'll be more akin to what happened with the last time
Yeah.
the Allies and the Soviets forced the Germans to sit down at a table and
Uh-huh.
sign a surrender document. It'll be more like von Paulus surrendering at
Uh-huh.
Stalingrad.
Yes.
Uh,
Okay.
I
Oh,
think I think maybe by the end of the summer, the Russians will surround Kiev.
yeah.
That the situation for the Ukrainian military is going to become pretty dire because they are losing. They're losing troops now at a very high, um, uh, probably double the rate of what they were a year ago.
A year
And it
ago.
was it
Yeah.
was high a year ago, but this is now the killing is intensified because they've got some now entrenched Russian positions and they're attacking them and they're getting slaughtered.
Yeah, I did see some clips from overseas of now how the females, Ukraine has to recruit now females
Right.
for, and snatching people from the streets into, but it doesn't work because the civilians are pushing back against those who wants to snatch people. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just I don't see that happening. So, by the way, guys, just prepare a question or two for Larry for later on as we continue our conversation here. And so this way I'll have the questions ready when that time comes up. As you know, tomorrow, guys, I will be talking to you. I'll do my depth analysis and all that stuff. For now, I want to turn it over to Larry to provide us his insights about the Russian president's visit to North Korea, which is the first in about 24 years. Now, to me, Larry, this doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Well, right.
What do you think?
Well, there's a lot of misinformation
Mm-hmm.
and political spin being put on this,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly in the West. So let's recall that 6 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
7 months ago, the North Korean leader was in
In
the.
That's
Well,
correct.
I think it was Vladivostok. I don't think he ever made it
Yeah.
to Moscow.
No. Yeah.
I think Putin went out to meet him in the eastern part of Russia, but
That's correct.
nonetheless, he came to Russia.
Yeah.
So this was a reciprocal visit, and
Yeah. Yeah. It's right here. Yeah.
so we're showing, Putin is returning the courtesy, showing, that they are equals, that
Yeah.
they're treating North Korea like uh, as an equal. The West has this interesting propaganda lie that oh that North Korea is that Russia is desperate for missiles.
Oh.
Oh my God, they're
Uh,
running out.
yeah. No.
they're they're on life support, and um, that North Korea is keeping them in the game. So this is Putin groveling, I guess, before Kim to get some more missiles. That is, I mean,
No.
it's complete garbage. It's not true. Now, what is true is that Putin has given the green light, and I think this was one of the issues that were discussed during the visit in Russia 7 months ago
Mm-hmm.
about allowing North Korean weapons to be used on the front lines, and that North Korean technical advisors will be there to monitor their performance. Why? Because they don't have to fire them off into an ocean as a test. By God, they get to test them on the battlefield.
Yeah.
They get real life experience. So there is that element. But let's also remember that it was, um, Donald Trump 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He traveled to the border and held the talks with Kim. So again, it was part of a nation's diplomacy. So Russia's just seizing the initiative here. The U.S. has lost the initiative,
Yeah.
preferring to treat North Korea as an enemy. And I'm not arguing that North Korean society is Shangri-La and a beacon of liberty and justice.
Yeah.
But you know, they've figured out their own way what they are, and the West it seems just, we're hell bent on having to change everybody.
Yeah.
We're like that bad boyfriend or girlfriend you get that they want to change everything about you because they don't like the way you are. I guess they never sang Billy Joel. I love
Yeah.
you just the way you are.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
we don't love anybody the way they are. By God, we got to change them into our own image.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I was thinking, and as I said, guys, tomorrow I'll be talking more about this one. But the thing, Larry, is the way I looked at it, and again, I could be wrong into this. To me, I just looked at the statements because to me, words tends to turn into policy of sort. And I recall the Russian president stated, which was only a few weeks ago, that now the gloves are off as far as the possibility of sharing certain type of weapons with other entities.
Oh yeah, no,
And
absolutely.
that's how
Yeah.
I interpret this, because to me now, the trip to North Korea is going to cement that step forward into assisting North Korean in developing more nuclear technology.
Yeah, up to this, I think Russia will be cautious in
Yeah.
that they will not necessarily take the lead. I think they'll defer to China
Mm-hmm.
because China traditionally has sort of had been the caretaker of North Korea,
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep them on a short leash.
Sure. Yeah.
But but if nothing else, Putin can provide some assurances that looking for an exchange. I do think one thing North Korea has that will benefit Russia is labor. So Russia has a
Correct.
real need for workers, trained, educated workers, and North Korea can provide that. So, but this is again, this we're moving in a direction
Yeah.
where the United States has been trying to isolate these countries, and instead of isolating them, they're reaching out and building stronger relationships with each other. Number one.
Mm-hmm.
And then beyond that, they're going to reach out to other parts of the world that traditionally have been ignored or bullied.
Yeah. But could this, Larry, and again, because I am very curious, because to me, a trip like this, it will have some far-reaching consequences for the countries themselves to move in one direction or another. Could this also has to do with what lies ahead regarding NATO? Because I got a word that the meeting that's going to take place in Washington in July, they might announce that now NATO is going to go global, which means Far East. Could it be that the Russians and North Koreans are just preparing themselves?
Yeah, that definitely possibility. But I mean, look again.
Yeah,
think how crazy that is. What NATO's talking about.
I know.
Hell, they can't even take care of Europe. Oh, but now we're going to take care of the world. It's like um, it's a serial degenerate junkie. It is a heroin addict, and it can't. It has to continue to up the dose. So now we're not content with trying to conquer Russia. By God, we're going to conquer China.
Yeah.
And you come back to the question: how? How exactly are you going to carry that off? That's the problem. The West is confronting the reality that they're dependent. Chromium. Let's just take chromium as one example.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is in the United States one chromium mine. There are 3 in Russia, 5 in China. And then you got 2 or 3 scattered around the rest of the world. Without chromium, you're not making military armaments. Period. So if the United States is basically has a very, very, very limited supply here in the States,
Yeah.
and they're talking about going to war not just with Russia but with China, can't sustain it. It's unsustainable.
Yeah. And speaking of China, Larry, next time when you and we met here for the community, I'd like us to address. I have something in mind. I'll run it by you later on, and I'd like really your insights into this, because again, what I see over the horizon and at the heart of it is China. So you and I will talk offline later on. About this one here. So, all right, guys, last word, Larry. I want to turn it over to you before I'll take any question or two. Where do you see this moving forward with all these bravado statements from NATO, with this failed summit in Switzerland, with what the US is saying over allocating now an extra $100 billion for Ukraine? Where do you see all this going?
I think there's a great risk that we're going to stumble into a war that we're not prepared to fight and that we'll certainly lose. And, it's extremely dangerous. And I think most of the American people are just not awake to that fact. They've bought into a lot of the propaganda about, Russia being an imperial power, China being an imperial power, and we got to stop them.
Yeah.
And so we accept that rhetoric without thinking it through. What does it mean? And what does it mean for us? So it is the war fever that's taken over Washington, because it's not just the belligerent remarks about China and Russia.
Yeah.
It's also the remarks about, hey, we're going to institute the draft, bring back the draft. And the House drafted applied it only to men, but the words are, the Senate's saying, okay, we'll include women.
Wow.
If the Senate backs that, I personally, I don't see how they go through with this in an election year. But if they pass the legislation and Biden signs it, good God.
That would be,
if you're Russia and China, you got to look at that and say they're coming after us. And so you're going to push back and be potentially more aggressive than you might be.
Wow.
That's just, like I said, it's extremely dangerous.
Let's hope it doesn't. Yeah, let's hope it doesn't happen. So, but I did see the bill, I think, that put the age between 18 and 26. And
right.
So let's hope the Senate does the right thing, because that will pave the way for riots inside this country here. So I want to say thank you first to Tarot Man Harris. Thank you so much for your super sticker, and appreciate your communication, by the way, on X. I follow Tarot Man. So thank you so much for that. So let's take a first question, and I have it right here. I'm going to share it with you all. Amber Spirit, your what question? Russian anti-ship long-range missiles already been granted to North Korea to attack the U.S. bases in Japan and South Korea. Any validity to that or truth?
I have no knowledge about that, but it's plausible, and it would not be. It would be in line with what both Putin and Lavrov have said, that okay, United States wants to start supplying weapons to Ukraine to be used to attack Russia. We have others that we can supply weapons to that can be used against the United States, and that would be an excellent example right there.
Wow, interesting. Second question from Dave H. Is there a connection between A, the failure of Switzerland, meaning that the Ukraine peace summit, and B, the timing of Istanbul peace treaty details? People now see that peace was on the table. Why now? Good question.
Yeah, I don't know what the specific motive was to put it out in the New York Times, other than I would note that it was not really the full, accurate story.
Yeah,
it was somewhat edited and tailored to reflect more of a let's call it a pro-Western view. I think part of it was designed to maybe go with the narrative that, see, Russia's had a chance before and didn't follow through. They because they said nothing about the fact that it was Lloyd Austin and Joe Biden, then with Boris Johnson, they were going to Zelensky and saying, no, do not negotiate. We'll back you to continue the fight.
Wow. Last comment here. It's not a question. It's a comment from Chanel, another avid supporter of the channel. She said, thank you, Larry. Dr. O, now you're most welcome. So, well, guys, Larry, I can't thank you enough, man. I appreciate you. I appreciate your insights. Always the community comes out with something. They learn something. So, and I usually
appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'm honored by the invitation there, David.
Larry, you're a friend. I consider you a friend. It's not a term that I use loosely. I think you know about me by now. I don't sugarcoat things, and I don't just call whomever a friend. That's not in
Right.
my nature, but I do consider you a friend. And also I appreciate the knowledge that the community can learn from, because that's what this is all about. So I'm very grateful, and I look forward to seeing you next time. So on behalf of the entire community, I say thank you.
Great. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Larry. My
Bye.
pleasure. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I hope you learned some insights from Larry. As always, he's a straight shooter, someone I trust. Again, it's not a term that I use loosely about people. I've known people here in the US that worked with for years and so forth, and never called them friends, because they were never friends of mine. So I don't. But anyway, I am very grateful to have you here. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 12:15. I'll be providing you my own analysis about the trip of the Russian president to North Korea and to Vietnam. I am aware of that as well, and I will elaborate more onto this. So once again, appreciate all the support. By the way, someone that asked me to not disclose the name, and I will not, out of respect, provided some very generous support for the channel. So that's all I can say. I'm very grateful for the person, but he or she was asking that I keep the name off the record, and I will respect that one. So anyway, thank you all. To all members and so forth, I hope you had access to upload the link to my Saudi book, and I am working on putting my other books, except this last one. I can't because of the legal contract. I won't be able to upload this one here. I can't. I have to wait the publisher and so forth. And when that time comes, you'll see it over there. So as always, guys, remember, geopolitics impacts your daily life in more ways than one. Till next time. Bye-bye.